Hi, my name's Bruce Lane. I'm the Executive Director at GTI Energy Limited. We've got in-situ recovery uranium projects in Wyoming. We're actively developing the resource at our Lo Herma project, about 10 miles away from Cameco's Smith Highland Ranch.
Good to see you, Bruce. Welcome to North America. We're going to see a bit more of you over here, aren't we?
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to spend some more time in North America over the next period.
Right, it's getting busy out there, but here's the thing. It's getting busy with a lot of Wyoming stories where you're based. You're surrounded by the great and the good, but also there's a lot of new entrants coming in here. And I'm trying to work out and filter out who I should actually be looking at. So where do you sit in that melee?
Yeah, look, we've been at this, as you know, for a few years. And we'd always hoped there'd be a point where all eyes were on Wyoming and particularly on the guys who are getting back into production or ramping up production or starting their new projects. So we've had quite a few years start on the new entrants. So where we think we sit is we're not in the exploration phase, although we are still exploration, we're actually developing a resource. We've got a 5.7 million pound resource at Lo Herma, and we're on a path to getting a study out for that project.
Okay, so we've got some pounds on the ground, but you kind of got to get it to scale where people can get a sense of the economics. And I don't necessarily mean by pumping out an economic study, but I understand you probably will be looking at that, or starting that process this year. It's really, if I look at the comps, if I look at UR Energies, also just down the road from you, or a couple of the projects down the road from you actually, that's a good solid little business, but you kind of got to get up to those levels, I think, bare minimum, and demonstrate that. So how do you do that?
Yeah, look, I think it is achievable for us, and that's why we're keeping on investing and keeping on our activity. So if you look at Shirley Basin, for instance, which is UR Energy's next project, it's 8.8 million pounds, I think, of that. Whatever's recoverable, it'll be 6 or 7 million pounds. So that size of project is really attractive economically, even at $65 a pound. So we know that the NPVs for those projects are well above $100 million and the IRRs are above 100%. So we know that our project is of that ilk. And you could say the same of the Gas Hills project, which is Encore's project. There's a number of those projects that, they're not 100 million pounds, but 10 million pounds or even less than that is attractive. And I think if you listen to the likes of Nuclear Fuels and Encore, they're looking at that sort of 10 to 15 million pound projects. So, we really do strongly believe that these are economically viable, particularly when you're getting to a uranium price which looks more like 100 than it does like 50.
Right, well, there's a few things driving the economics there, right? If you're looking at your energy Fuels, I think you just named, they've got the ability to process.
Yeah.
You guys haven't, right? So you're going to need to do a little bit more than them, right? Because you're going to probably think about tolling or selling your output to kind of get things going. So where do you kind of see that fit in? Again, no economic studies, but you got a sense of this thing, right?
Yeah, look, the short answer is it's too early to actually say what the outcome is. So what our job is to define the resource in the ground and have it as a good enough quality to be able to support some of those outcomes you've talked about. And a central processing plant is well within the realms of possibility for a 10 million pound project of ISR in these sandstones.
Right. Okay.
It's not, we don't, look, we can have conversations about teams and how you get to execution, how fast you get to execution, because obviously the time value of money is a big part of an NPV. So if there was an attractive tolling arrangement or partnership arrangement of some kind, then sure, we can build it as a satellite and supply the resin beads to someone else.
Right.
But it is too early to say what the outcome will be. So we're just driving the asset as hard as we can. I can ask
these questions. That's what I'm trying.
Yeah, that's right.
You might make a mistake and actually answer me. No, but it's kind of important for me to differentiate you from the rest. I'm talking about the explorers here. So you're quite clear with me saying, well, look, yes, we've got exploration and more exploration to come, but we've actually got a resource here and we think we can build on that short term to be a more, like where are you, advanced explorer, or are you an early stage developer? What are you?
I think the best way that we've set upon to describe it is resource development. So, we're clearly not, we don't have a study yet, but that's, you know, what we're heading towards. You know, we need to get a study on the project, and this next drilling program we're doing at the back end of this year will help to put more meat on the bones in terms of overall pounds, and also bring pounds into indicated, and it'll allow us then to put water monitoring holes in and really get that process underway properly for the study.
Right, so it seems like you're sort of 18, 24 months ahead of the kind of the newbies. I'm going to stick with Wyoming for now, but there's a much bigger competitive set out there that you also need to be aware of. You're going to need to hire the right people. Everyone that's come through the door had, you know, Euro Energy sitting exactly where you were earlier today. They're saying it's skill sets. You've got to have the right people to help advance and move this project forward, and that's thinking about getting into like build or, you know, production, etc. That guy, who's he?
Yeah. Matt Hartman sitting over there in the back watching me, and he'll critique my performance later.
Good. What's he do?
He's a geologist and an engineer, and he has experience in ISR projects through the life of those projects. So, you know, one of Matt's skills and experience is studies. And he's worked on the likes of Laramide's Church Rock project. He worked for Strathmore and a number of other uranium companies, and he's come back to uranium. And we met Matt a number of years ago when he was working for SRK, and then he went off and did another gig, and then he's become available, and he's decided to come and work for us, which we're delighted about. So he's worked on Smith Ranch Highland, Cameco's project 10 miles to our east. So, you know, we're just really happy to have somebody in our team who's going to help us run that study. We've got good geological engineering support as it is, but I think it's really important to have somebody on board, not just from a technical point of view, but also from a commercial standpoint and from a networking standpoint, to help us to get, you know, to build our contacts, I guess, in North America and in the industry.
Right. Given you've got a couple of $1 million in the bank, thereabouts, right? What's the most important thing and one of the best allocation of capital for you? Is it saying to Matt, get on and get that study up and running? Is it actually, let's do a bit more drilling and go from 5.7 to, you know, something heading towards that 10 mark? I mean, how are you going to play it?
Yeah, it's the latter. You know, we got to put some more holes in the ground. But I guess the point about thinking of the study is that, you know, there's monitoring work, there's work that you can do ahead of time that doesn't necessarily cost a huge amount, but it needs to start early. And so we've done a lot of that already. You know, we've got obviously, you know, what are bugs and bunnies, I think is what some people call it, but the flora and fauna studies. You know, you've got archaeological. You know, we don't have a First Nations or Indigenous kind of group to deal with, but we work with ranchers on some of our ground. So there is a lot of groundwork to do. So we're doing as much of that as we can within reason, but the focus for this season is to put more holes in the ground and to build our understanding of the resource so that we can start to, you know, really eyeball that study and hopefully get into it next year. Okay, so is there a drill program set out? Yeah, so we're in the process of permitting. We already had 40 odd holes permitted as left over from last year, which we didn't drill at the back end of last year. But what we've done is sort of recalibrate that against what we understood from the drilling last year. And we've also allowed Matt an opportunity to get his feet under the table and really get his head around which holes are going to be the best bang for buck for us this season. So we're in the process of permitting that. And we expect to be in a position, you know, around July, I guess, to get on the ground and drill. Right, so given the... help people perhaps coming in at this new and fresh and want to understand uranium, want to understand ISR. In terms of the drilling, how many pounds can you add through how many meters? So like you say, do you need a lot of holes to go, well, actually we can extrapolate from this and go, we can get to that 10 million with X number of holes? I mean, how does it work? Yeah, well, just to give a perspective, the drill database that pertains to the footprint of the property that we have at the moment was 880 holes. We bumped that up to 900, over 900 with the drill program at the end of last year, and then we'll put, you know, another 70 odd holes in it this year. So we're going to talk about 900 holes in total in this resource by the end of this year. And they're sort of down to 400 or 500 feet. There'll be some deeper ones. you know, 100 odd metres in
English.
English. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And you know, look, and the raw drilling cost is not huge. The mud rotary holes, so they're
Okay.
pretty straightforward. But you do have to do quite a lot of holes if you're starting with a fresh piece of ground. You know, you can't put one hole on one end of it and one on the other like a coal project. You really do have to follow the roll front and define it.
So tell us what you with that type of drilling, because I think it's always fascinating to understand the different types of drilling that's out there and what it is, what are the data points that you're trying to actually capture here. So we're not looking at necessarily conventional core analysis. There's more to it and trying to understand the systems that are happening underground. So can you explain what you've seen to date with historic data, which you guys have picked up, and what you're trying to understand going forward?
Yeah, look, some you know, look, obviously we get drill holes with really good mineralisation and good thicknesses. So what we're looking is we've got stacked sands, and we're looking for multiple layers of stacked sands, and you know, you're ultimately looking for porosity in that environment. It's a sandstone ore body. You want the lixiviant or the leach solution to go into that underground, and you're talking about a slow kinetic leach, which then liberates the uranium, allows you to pump it to the surface. So it's almost polar opposite to what you'd expect from, say, an Athabasca. You know, the magic can Alaska hole of the last few days, you're never going to see that with what we're doing. Right. So it's a grade, we're looking for a grade and a thickness, and it may be layered sands. And so what we're seeing in the ore body at Lo Herma is we're seeing, you know, good numbers that indicate that there's, you know, amenability for in-situ recovery. We want a saturated ore body. It needs to be wet, you know, because you've got to get your solution in there and then get it out again, and the water's the transport for that. So we're also looking at the oxidation reduction boundary when we're drilling, because there's a process where the mineralisation occurs through that process. So, you know, every drill hole tells us a story, and you know, we try and make those drill holes as accurate as possible and get mineralisation. You know, and the rest, I think, is, you know, somebody like Matt who's sitting over there, who's actually a geologist, you know, could give us a chapter and verse on.
Okay, so if I was trying to do some math at home, and you said, right, I need about 900 odd holes, and that's going to give me, let's say, £6 million. I'll do the extrapolating. 5.7 now. It's like, it gives me a sense, if you're aiming for 10, as I think, well, that could be a good business, then I can sort of roughly work out how many additional holes. You give me a sense of the cost of that. So you're going to need to raise some money to kind of finish off a program to kind of get you to that 10. My question is timing, because we've had a wonderful run on uranium spot price, hasn't necessarily trickled down and to the equities, and the ones that perhaps it has, it's kind of come off a bit. If I look at some of the Aussies, down like 25% in the last 2-3 weeks, as we come off the spot price high. So you've got to time that right, and you've got to raise enough to obviously keep the lights on and keep things moving and telling that growth story. But more importantly for Matt over there, drill enough holes to kind of get you to that. I think you said it. 10 million would give you roughly a good company. It would be a good start to the company. So, have you got a sense of what are those conversations around raising money? How much money, when?
Yeah, look, the one thing I can tell you for sure is that there's plenty of people that are interested in raising money for what we're doing, and I think, as I said before, the company is differentiated because of the stage we're at and how advanced we are, and there isn't anybody else. So there's an appetite to raise money, and our question is always, you know, what's the best value for our current shareholders? You know, I can tell you pretty confidently that we're not raising money in the next 5 minutes, but we are thinking about it, and.
I'll ask you before you go then.
Yeah.
No, but okay, no time immediately. Let's say you got a circa a couple of $1 million in the bank. So I guess I mentioned like how you spend that drilling, how much of that you spend, over what time frame, and when will you have to seriously consider, because you don't want to run down to the last shekels, because that's a very horrible conversation when you're raising capital. So it feels like this year, because right? Yeah. Honestly. But in what type of environment are you going to do that? So what are you going to need to see out there to say, well, that now's the best time? Yeah,
look, there's a number of external factors that would be helpful for us, and I think clearly the uranium price is one of those things. If the uranium price does go up, well, that then creates an environment where it makes it easier for us to, to tell our story and attract.
But it doesn't necessarily reflect in like a higher share price. It just says it's a nicer, positive, people leaning into uranium.
Yeah, look, I think there is certainly, we've got a lot of retail investors in our stock, and we have had quite a retail story, and particularly on the ASX, and so it does make a difference, a big difference, when the uranium price is positive. I think the more of our neighbours in Wyoming that are active, and particularly the producers turning things on. We've got UEC talking about getting back into business in August. We've got John there ramping up at Lost Creek and possibly pressing the button on the FID for Shirley Basin. We know that Peninsula's on its path to production, although that won't probably be until later this year, as I understand it.
That's right.
Look, and Encore's obviously really active on lots of fronts. So, there's a lot of all of that activity is supportive to our story, and I think I guess what we're trying to do at this point in time is socialise our story more in North America and make some connections with what we would call the smart money, institutional money in the sector, who understands the real value of what we're doing.
Is there much of that around? Because obviously you've got the kind of traditional uranium investors, the Tribecas of this world, but not many of them. And they're kind of fully loaded, it feels like, right? They're loaded up. Are you seeing people outside of that sort of tight community coming in?
Well, yes, although, even with the guys you've just spoken about, they haven't been particularly familiar with our story. And so, that's why these events are so important to us, because it allows us to speak to people in context, and for them to meet us, because I think it's really important that they actually, they obviously want to understand who's behind the company and whether they really have the expertise and they're really serious about it, or whether they're just trying to promote the next story.
And do you think it's important, because obviously Tribeca, Aussies, but do you think it's important for you and Matt to kind of cozying up to some of the North American investors? Is Aussie, are you OTC or?
We do have an OTC listing as well.
Okay. Yeah, so will you be sort of turning the volume up a little bit in North America?
Yeah, look, I think the time's right. The story's maturing to a point. We've been listed in the OTC for a couple of years, and we probably in a way spent some money on promoting it to that environment a little early. The story has matured significantly. We thought $50 or $60 would get people interested in it, and it's taken a bit more than that. So I think certainly it's much more of a mature story now than it was 2 years ago. And so and I think also even with our neighbours in the basin, I mean, as soon as the producers start to get into production and get over that hurdle, then they're obviously thinking about, they've got long-term contracts with customers, and they've got to keep feeding those mills with pounds. Where do the pounds come from? And it does take a long time and a lot of money to drill these things out and get them ready to put a study on them and then get a mill built. So
well, let's talk about the skill-based thing, because I think I hear what you're saying, and that's a conversation for another day as well. But who have you got on the team? Talk about the teams that relevant experience for the process ahead, because what I'm hearing is not a lot of skilled people out there. We're having to train people up from scratch. It's been a while, and there's no one around. So how do you ensure you get the people that you need to be able to do what you're talking about doing? Because otherwise it's got to go from theory to reality. Yeah,
and look, the answer is you can only do what you can do, at a point in time. And I can't go and start hiring a borefield engineer. There's no point. It'd be a waste of money, because we're just not there in our life cycle. Where we are in our life cycle is, exploration, and we need somebody to go and tell the story, both to our neighbours, but also obviously to investors. And we need somebody who can run a study, and that's where Matt comes in. Right. And we also we've got Jim Boffman on our board, who's got good experience in terms of helping make connections in the industry. He's been in the industry for for 30 or 40 years. And we have an engineering partner at BRS who similarly has been doing this since the 70s. So we think for the stage we're at, we've got what we need. But what we need in 18 months or 2 years' time will start to look different. And so clearly we need to make ourselves attractive as as a partner, employer, and or to investors for all those things.
Okay.
The answer is probably the same.
So resource development, drilling. That's what you're focused on.
That's absolutely. Having said that, we've got projects in Utah that we've kind of dusted off because there's a lot happening down in the Colorado Plateau in the conventional mining space with uranium and uranium-vanadium projects with, Anfield, Western Uranium, Vanadium, and Energy Fuels, for instance. So, there might be something we can do with those projects now. We've got quite a lot of activities been undertaken. There's probably a resource there if there's a little bit more money invested. And we've also got a suite of projects that includes our Green Mountain project and our Great Divide projects. And they all, in this environment, really justify more work. And it's really for us just working out how do we sequence that and how do we create a pipeline and how do we make our money and our resources go round. So the short answer is yes, resource development at Lo Herma is our number one focus. And then, if we can do something in these other areas, that'll be a bonus.
Good update. Appreciate it, Phil.
Thanks very much. Cheers.